ancient alien theorists, those numbers just don't add up.
The Great Pyramid was not built in only 22 years, because logistically speaking, you would have to cut, transport, and put into place one stone every 9 seconds. And there are modern engineers who have come forward and said, we couldn't do this in 22 years either.
There are all kinds of theories on how the Great Pyramid of Giza was built. So many theories, you just sit back and shake your head. And that includes ET visitations, levitating the blocks with some kind of sound system, anti-gravity, thousands of workers pulling long ropes on a ramp that had to be almost 2 miles long to get it up to where it is. All I know is that they are so finely aligned and that the architecture is so precise that even modern people today, with great technology, would have a difficult time being that good. How, for example, in the inside of the pyramids and the tombs, could they build granite and marble areas that were just so perfect and so clean? You mean to tell me that people of that time period did this by hand? I don't think so.
The enormous size and weight of the stones, multiplied by the sheer number of them, makes one thing certain. The construction of the Great Pyramid remains one of the greatest marvels and mysteries of architectural engineering.
I don't want to discount human ingenuity, because I do believe that we do have the ability to do these things over a longer period of time, but the knowledge to build some of these monuments, there had to have been some type of intervention or some type of knowledge given to ancient man to carry out those instructions. They couldn't have just come up with it on their own.
In Egypt, there are old traditions saying the Great Pyramid was constructed by a pharaoh with the name of Saurit. And then they say Saurit is the same which the Hebrew community calls Enoch. Enoch is a prophet in the Old Testament. There are books of Enoch called the apocryphic texts. You make a connection with Enoch to these extraterrestrials. He clearly says he met these extraterrestrials. Now we have writings in the book of Enoch, and he gave the order to construct a building which cannot be destroyed by the thousands of years of the future.
And the ancient Egyptian texts speak that the pyramids were built by human beings with the assistance of the guardians of the sky, meaning the gods. And so we have proposed that the pyramids were built by human hands, but with the assistance of extraterrestrial technology.
As one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Great Pyramid remains not only an archaeological mystery, but a geographical marvel. In 1877, author and theologian Joseph Seiss demonstrated that the Great Pyramid resides at the intersection of the longest line of latitude and the longest line of longitude, the exact center of all the landmass in the world. Also, each of its 4 sides aligns almost precisely with the 4 points of the compass, though such an instrument wasn't even designed until thousands of years later. But is it just mere coincidence that pyramid construction, very similar to that practiced in ancient Egypt, was also evolving halfway around the world?
There are pyramids on remote Pacific islands, and in India, and in Mexico. So this is something that's all over the world. Archaeologists haven't really been able to explain why dissimilar cultures, separated by huge oceans, are building the same structures and in many ways the same way.
Here in central Mexico stands an ancient city that dates back more than 2,000 years. Its name, Teotihuacan, literally means city of the gods. And located at its center is the Pyramid of the Sun. Incredibly, this pyramid's perimeter is virtually the same as that of the Great Pyramid of Giza. A structural coincidence? Or could it be that both were inspired by the same designers?
Couple theories for that. Okay, one, maybe they were all taught the same thing by an extraterrestrial race. Two, there were ancient travelers from within this planet who went from one area to another over the thousands of past years. And then as some skeptics will say, hey, that's the greatest archaeological way to make it, so they just knew it. I don't think that's the case.
At Teotihuacan, here you have a giant pyramid of the sun and a giant pyramid of the moon. According to the legends, these things were built by gods who were giants at the end of one of the destructions of the world. Civilizations such as the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Hopi Indians of northern Arizona, they believe that the world has been destroyed 4 times in the past. One time by ice, once by fire, once by water. Each time mankind rebuilds again. And Teotihuacan supposedly was built just at the beginning of one of these 4 worlds.
You may ask the question, why build these huge, huge structures? For what purpose? Well, in Egypt, for example, either the pharaohs had incredible egos and they wanted to outdo themselves, right? So they built these huge museums for themselves. Or it's also possible that these ancients wanted to leave behind something for us.
It is written in ancient Egyptian texts, the purpose why the pyramid was built was to store knowledge. 300 books which allegedly contained the knowledge of the universe, dictated by the guardians of the sky.
Of course, the pyramids aren't the only ancient monuments that continue to baffle scientists and archaeologists. There are literally hundreds of them, and they can be found in every corner of our world. In a remote area of the Pacific Ocean lies one of the most isolated yet inhabited locations in the world, Easter Island. Here, over 800 stone guardians called moai stand watch over the island's coastline. But are they primitive native carvings or eerie portraits of alien visitors from thousands of years ago?
Whatever they were for, they're made to last for thousands of years. They're built out of blocks of stone that weigh many, many tons. Not only are people building structures out of these huge megalithic blocks of stone, but this was going on around the world. And yet, supposedly, it's just primitive people doing this for no really good reason, it would seem.
I think one of the things that comes into our considerations of what ancient cultures could have accomplished is whether they were able to write it down or not. We're very tied to, if we have evidence that they wrote down how they did it, then we believe we know how they did it. So Egypt, we have a lot more writings and drawings that show them building the pyramids, give us an idea of the technology. If you go somewhere like Easter Island, we don't have any real written evidence of what they did, and sometimes that leads us to question their innovativeness.
"3,000 miles away, in the Republic of Bolivia, stonework exists which is amazingly similar to the statues of Easter Island. Tiwanaku is, in fact, so ancient that it defies modern dating techniques. It is estimated to be over 17,000 years old, perhaps the oldest city in the world. And somehow, the sculptures at Tiwanaku were constructed in the same style and with the same enigmatic expressions as their distant cousins on Easter Island.
A lot of the stuff with Tiwanaku you can see in earlier civilizations, all the way back, before into the centuries BC in Peru. You see some of these same patterns, some of the same iconography, imagery, and you can see the ancestry of this.
But while tourists flock to the ruins of Tiwanaku, perhaps the most mystifying of all ancient sites lies just a few hundred yards away. Of relatively little interest to most visitors, Pumapunku is a field of stone ruins that both thrills and stimulates the imaginations of ancient alien theorists.
In my opinion, the most significant piece of evidence that we have in this entire ancient astronaut puzzle is Pumapunku in the highland of Bolivia. While the pyramids at Giza are incredible feat of achievement, compared to Pumapunku, the pyramids are child play. Logic does not exist at Pumapunku because there we have megalithic structures which just lie about this entire site as if ripped apart by some sort of a great force.
The blocks of Pumapunku were so finely cut that they once perfectly interlocked, like the pieces of an elaborate puzzle. But with the nearest quarry over 10 miles away, how did these colossal stones, some weighing hundreds of tons, even get here?
We are talking about the place 4,000 meters over sea level. That means there are no trees up there which you could use for rollers. Nothing grows except a few grasses and bushes.
I have stood in front of many monuments. However, Pumapunku takes the crown, because what we find there is so inexplicable, so inachievable, that the question remains, how was it done and for what purposes? Mainstream archaeologists say that Pumapunku was built by the Aymara Indians. And we would all have to agree that in order to build something like Pumapunku, you need writing, you need planning, and you need some sort of a idea where which piece goes and how it ultimately all fits together. But there is one thing that all the mainstream archaeologists agree upon, that the Aymara didn't have any writing. So how is it possible that they built all of this without plans?
What's really amazing, and why the ancient astronaut theorists are so drawn to Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, is that the quality of the stonework and the immense size of these blocks is so incredible and perfect that there's actually evidence of machining, and that they were using machine tools to cut these blocks.
One of these platforms is 800 tons, and they are so smoothly polished. You have some stone, megalithic stones, with grooves which are just a few millimeters inside, which definitely cannot be made with Stone Age chisels. It doesn't work with Stone Age chisels, so there is another technology behind it.
The lines cut into these rocks are exactly straight and precisely the same depth from one end to the other.
It's as if only master builders